I don't think it's authoritarian to make people get a vaccine any more than it's authoritarian to make a person drive on the right side of the road. The government actually has a theological right to do this. You in fact really do risk sinning by not getting vaccinated. First things first, I think every Christian should get vaccinated. You don't risk sinning by getting vaccinated, but you in fact really do risk sinning by not getting vaccinated. If the vaccine is effective, which it is, every meaningful study shows that it is, not always in preventing you from getting sick, but usually in preventing you from getting deadly sick or extra sick or any number of things. It keeps the symptoms down. That keeps hospitals emptier, so people who are in real danger get the real big help. Likewise, Christians should continue wearing masks as long as trained and informed civic authorities keep recommending it. As long as that's the majority of the feedback that we're getting, wearing a mask doesn't hurt you. Wearing a mask does help your neighbor. To do these things is actually a good work. It keeps hospitals emptier, it prevents infections, it shows that you value the lives of your neighbors. And honestly, it means approaching the world with trust that God is actually doing good through the first use of the law, even in organizations that we might be otherwise skeptical of. The practices that we're using to mitigate COVID-19 are very low risk. But if your doctor has a reason to suspect that you personally cannot safely receive the vaccine due to some pre-existing medical condition, then you're actually exempt. Then everyone else's practice will keep you safe. And in those cases, you should still probably wear a mask. So what does this mean about vaccine mandates for the entire US population? Well, that's tricky. You and I have, of course, been trained to be skeptical of authority and overreaches of authority. But when we think about the first use of the law, with the role of the government in the first use of the law, and how the government has used vaccines in previous generations, I think we should understand that the government actually has a theological right to do this. Whether that's a constitutional right, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, I can't tell you. But I don't think it's authoritarian to make people get a vaccine any more than it's authoritarian to make a person drive on the right side of the road. At the end of the day, if we live together, we have to live for each other, in communion with each other. When we fail to look after our neighbor and look for our own self-asserted rights against the well-being of our neighbors, we commit a real dangerous sin. Sometimes Christians say they have a right, by Christian authority, by their own Christian faith, they have a right to make the choice for themselves, and that a government can't make them take a vaccine. The first use of the law kind of debunks this. Governments have a right to restrain evil. But there's this troubling underlying claim that being a Christian gives you a unique right. That's not a true claim. This line of argumentation ends up resembling what the 12 Articles of the 16th century, a text rejected by Martin Luther, argued for. The 12 Articles were this collection of demands from farmers, as well as a few false prophets, who demanded that their territorial princes must give them everything they want because the farmers are Christians and they deserve all good things on earth because they're Christians. And if the farmers didn't get what they were asking for, these same farmers had the right to lead violent insurrections against the princes who stood in the way of their freedom. In Luther's admission to peace, Luther lays out pretty clearly that this is the opposite of what Jesus did. Jesus never killed anyone or tried to overthrow a state by violence. Likewise, he never said that to become a Christian is to demand that the world caters to your every whim. Instead, Jesus clearly says, take up your cross and follow me. Since the farmers were, in the name of Jesus, starting to murder people, Luther called upon the princes to stop them by the power of the sword. The princes did this with, frankly, way too much vigor and not enough discretion. The princes were terrible. But to Luther, being a Christian gives you the grounds to advocate for the well-being of your neighbor, to behave faithfully and to suffer alongside people, to the shame and the discredit of their oppressors. Being a Christian doesn't mean that the state or anyone has to cater to your demands or bring you to rise up in violent insurrection. There is space for civic and civil disobedience, both in the Bible and in the Lutheran tradition. We can talk about that at another time, though, because rejecting vaccines and masks and working against the government as it tries to protect the lives of the vulnerable just isn't a defensible theological take.